both. Thank you so, so much for agreeing to meet with me. And I consider you both to be the experts in the field of intervention internationally with regard to group work and specifically things like post-crisis work, whether that be war-stricken areas or maybe disaster relief. And being in Sonoma County in California, we have lots of fires that have happened and continue to happen. LA, Sonoma County, Napa. These are very important interventions for us to have. And so I really appreciate you taking the time to help me to introduce this type of intervention to the community so that way we can have better ideas, I think, of what we can do when it comes to group work in post-relief. So thank you so much. And I'm wondering if it's okay. I know your expertise, but if it would be okay if you start by introducing yourself.
Yes, absolutely. So thank you, Christy, for inviting us. I'm going to start by introducing my colleague, Claudio Mochi. He's the director of the University Master Program in Play Therapy of the International Academy for Play Therapy and the European University of Rome. He's founder and president of the Association for Play Therapy Italy, psychologist and psychotherapist, a registered play therapy supervisor, expert in emergency intervention and disaster mental health with more than 25 years of international field experience. So he has worked with major humanitarian organizations in post-disaster scenarios in the creation and development of psychosocial programs dedicated to survivors and training of local staff.
Thank you.
And yeah, he has done play therapy and trauma in 6 continents, over 20 countries, and my name is Isabella Cassina. I'm the Director of Project Management at the International Academy for Play Therapy based in Switzerland. I'm University Lecturer in Switzerland and Italy and founding member of the International Consortium of Play Therapy Associates and Editor-in-Chief of the Italian Play Therapy magazine. I'm a social worker, registered therapeutic play specialist. I'm doing a PhD in expressive arts therapy, and I've been for many years head of social services for Swiss Red Cross asylum seekers and refugee sector. I'm expert in international cooperation and project development with over 12 years of international field.
Thank you so much. And I'm so grateful to have you both here. Your expertise is just representative of who you are, but you're also just amazing humans. And I'm so wonderful to get to know you personally. And so thank you so much for being willing to share your expertise today. I appreciate that. I have some questions that I'm hoping that we can go through. And if it's okay with you, I I would like to talk a little bit about group work in general, then becoming more specific onto intervention in short-term capacities. So I would say just a short-term within maybe 6-session model, and then what it might look like longer for you and your just personal experience with it, and maybe some examples of how you've been able to implement this successfully in different scenarios. Would that be okay? Wonderful, thank you. Okay, what are your thoughts on the use of play therapy as a short-term intervention in crisis situations, either post-disaster or just any sort of short-term way? You know, as we all know, person-centered or client-centered is really a process, and it's something that takes time because it's relationship-based. And so how to be able to implement work like this while building the relationship at the same time that you're trying to help people heal in this capacity feels like you're doing two things at once and really short and really brief. And so how is that for you?
Let's say that the way we conceive crisis define the way we structure our intervention. For some reason, especially in the past, many professionals believed that the most complicated situation in life could be managed in a very short time. Mm-hmm. And one idea behind it is that the focus of this intervention was considered to be restoring the pre-crisis level of functioning, which in fact is very difficult because life events are changing us and everything be around us. And many times as this process of change started long before the crisis erupt. Mm-hmm. So any intervention start by fostering a condition of recovering a basic sense of safety. And we know that safety cannot be induced in other people, sure, but is built from interactions that convey signals of safety. Mm-hmm. So this process of connecting with others, build of sense of familiarity, takes time. We know from our own experiences and from scholars like Porges that what we can do is creating a context that helps the person to have this internal process of regain a sense of safety. But we cannot rush, or we cannot persuade somebody in feeling safe. We just create the condition. This does not mean that we cannot intervene promptly, that we shouldn't be present at the early stage of a crisis. That is very important. And we also should remember that play, and especially play therapy, in some situation can provide immediate relief and support, but they are mostly effective when they are placed in a larger framework. Mm-hmm. So in our experience, we realize that play therapy can be extremely effective as a treatment, but we also learned that treatment is a part of a bigger kind of process that starts with the groundwork, is all the activity that allow us to put in contact with other people, and then to have the first stage in which we involve our clients. Then a second stage when our focus is to empower them, and finally we can have the treatment phase.
Thank you. Isabella, do you have any comments on the question about short-term play therapy intervention within crisis work?
No, actually, what Claudio said is the main. You're listening. No, it's fine like this. So, no.
Yeah. Okay, thank you. What I appreciate you talking about first is just, this reestablishment of safety that's really kind of impossible to do in the situation that you would come to, but that it takes relationship building and connection initially, and that play therapy specifically can be immediately responsive, which I think is such a huge factor when we consider how we would intervene with children and families, that play therapy would be considered sort of the go-to for what we can do as we're trying to initiate as therapists coming into this, whatever the situation might be. Thank you. And then moving on, how does play transcend language barriers, and how is it the universal language?
That's so interesting. So I've been conducting individual and group psychosocial interventions with children and families for 13 years. And in my work in Switzerland, very often the people I interact with spoke little or no Italian. And in my work abroad, I was often the one who did not speak the local language. And in both cases, I needed to interact directly with people conveys some messages with time to establish a relationship of understanding and trust. And when we talk about communication, we know that it is about verbal input with specific content, but mostly it's about non-verbal signals that, especially in our work, should send messages of acceptance and understanding and support to the person. So to get to the play, every child, parent, and professional I worked with, and every country I worked in is different. But in spite of this, there has never been anyone who did not appreciate, who did not feel involved and relieved and amused at getting in touch with the playful dimension. That said, the great risk is to think that a play activity is a kind of a key that can open any door at any place and time. So play actually allows one to overcome language barriers and is a universal language if there are two conditions. So if it is combined with certain qualities of the practitioner, and here everything Porges explains, thanks to the Polyvagal Theory, helps us to understand how and why a certain way of doing is better than others for the purpose of sending safety signals and allow the play activity to be carried out while really benefiting from it. And second condition, if play is adjusted to the cultural context and proposed to the group at the right time. So the play proposal should not be rushed. So this is true for both children and parents who are involved in therapeutic processes, but also for professionals in training. So groundwork is what allows us to take full advantage of these qualities of play.
Thank you. And for the discussion of the polyvagal theory with Porges and how to be able to appropriately intervene at the time and the conditions that the child or the family or any participant would need. And also the introduction of play therapy to be timely. Can you tell me just a little bit more about setting the foundation and when play therapy might be the appropriate time to then come in for intervention? I guess what would be, so the foundational work would be we would come in and we would introduce ourselves. We would talk about, how would we set the foundation, I suppose. And then from there, what would be the best time to initiate play therapy intervention after setting the foundation?
We just deciding who we are. Maybe we can interact, Isabella.
Yeah.
But let me say, as we anticipated before, is essential to create a groundwork. Groundwork start with becoming familiar with the context, so know what is going on, what are the resources, what are the needs and the problems, and then start to be, for the others, a source of possible safety interactions. That's the first part. Then another important part is to have a share of intentions and objectives with the community and, of course, with the parents. Mm-hmm. After that, we might be required, sometimes parents will reach to us for an immediate intervention, and we can start to meet children and to assess individually if they are ready to have an individual process or something that is more common, to start with a process that it's focused on low level of specialization. So play therapy is not the first thing. You can use the power of play to get to know each other, to involve children, to have some relief of tension through play, and through this process start to get to know their needs. After that, what we do is to focus on the group activities that can help children to empower themselves. Usually it's co-regulatory activity and some focus on coping skills. Through this process, we know even better what are the needs, and then we can start thinking of starting a treatment for those who need. But if we go through this entire process, the percentage of children who need individual attention or group therapy is reduced. I don't know if Isabella, if
Yeah, if we should use a symbol for this, for what Claudio was explaining, it would be a triangle put on the opposite. So this would be like, yeah, I wanted to draw it for you, but a reverse triangle, yeah. Yeah. Actually, the bigger part, the idea is involving as many people as possible in very recreational and playful activities. And then only fewer people will be involved in this other phase that calls empowerment, where other kind of activities will be done. And as Claudio was saying, only a smaller part of people, of children who participated in our first activities will be then involved in treatment. So the idea is to go from the more general activities to the more specialized treatment.
Thank you so much for making, because a lot of times when we're asked as clinicians to come in to communities, they have a whole group of people waiting for us to receive support and service. And so I think that that's a really good indication of we need to select who really needs it. And to do that, that's the foundational process where through play, you're creating this rapport build, right? And introducing yourself as an element of safety for you specifically. And from there, just sort of find who needs what. And then the introduction of community partners, that's at the top, right? So that they have their sense of community, so that even when we step out, that they have ongoing support, which is something that we found, for example, in Maui, in Lahaina. So they did a lot of community-based intervention, and we're asking to figure out what do we do now? We have all these people, the entire community needs support and help. So how to refine that, I think, is such a really important process. And group work would be an acceptable intervention of something we might begin with, but that individualized support might come after that. We realize, oh, they need a little bit more than what our initial interventions might be. And so then that's a little bit finer down at the bottom is this specialized intervention, which may or may not be from the people who are initially coming in to do that work. That might be the community-based clinicians to continue that work and that care individually. Thank you so much for that. That's wonderful. Okay, looking at all the different theoretical considerations, how does a child-centered, either directive or non-directive, compare when it comes to traveling to a new location and creating a group quickly to address the community need versus, let's say, some of those initial go-tos, which would be CBT interventions, cognitive behavioral therapy interventions, people are very quick to use because of its short-term present focus effectiveness. And so how would you say that, CCPT or these other play therapy interventions might compare in this group work?
Yeah, I would like first to respond with a couple of thoughts. First, every intervention must be tailored to unique situation. So we need to consider the individual needs, the context, and the resource available. So there is not just one protocol of intervention. And as a consequence, we have to think that any professional who want to face crisis context should have a broad repertoire of models and shouldn't be in love with any of them. Sometimes it happens. We are in love, or we like to practice one model and we want to use it at all costs. And we should also be aware that many models are effective if we're using in consider the appropriate time and space. So directed intervention can be very effective. But on the other side, we have to think that once we use directed intervention, we assume that we know what our clients need. And we assume that we know how to engage and guide them through difficulties. This might happen, but it works better when we build a process before. So when we pass through the stages of, as we said, groundwork, involvement, empowerment, then we can be more sure that we can direct our therapy. On the other side, using non-directive allow us to have a lot of advantages. From start, we can allow children to have their own space in which they can explore and have their experience they need. And through this process, we have also the benefit to know them more, to build a stronger relationship, and to integrate, if we think is needed, with other kind of intervention like CBT. But that comes first. So it might be counterintuitive, but if we have less time, probably a non-directive intervention would be more suitable. The only drawback is that we are not very strong in using this kind of approach.
Thank you. I appreciate using the ideas that we need to pull from multiple sources, and that if we're in love with one modality of treatment or method of treatment, that we might get a little bit lost and we might not be serving what the individual client needs, which I think is very appropriate. But I also love the highlight of non-directive work being sort of your primary go-to, just because it helps with that foundational work of establishing the empowerment, the sense of safety, the community, everything from the beginning, so that then you can sort of, I have an idea of what would be the best intervention moving forward. So we're making the assumption, right, that group work in a, let's say, non-directive capacity would be best practice, but maybe not for every individual. And so really making sure that that individualized care is looked at, even when we're coming in with a community of people that need support, that we still want to make sure that we're not doing just here's the intervention and everybody gets it, and because that may not be effective. Thank you. Yeah, I appreciate that. Isabella, do you have anything to add? No? Perfect. Okay. Within the framework of multicultural honoring, how can we best enter a new space and honor the traditions and customs? How do we know what or how to assure that we are being inclusive?
Yeah. So in one of his books, Claudio develops the concept of good practice. And good practice involves three dimensions: respect, effectiveness, and safety. Claudio tells about when he arrived in Bam in Iran after the earthquake, and how his work should have involved immediate collection of information and data, but how instead, in the face of of the pain and destruction caused by the earthquake, he left his tools in the tent and went among the people, at first only to observe and help with practical matters. So the word perspect in Latin means to look back. Instead of proceeding quickly and immediately starting, for example, to come up with our favorite play activities, we pause to give attention, to reflect, try to understand, adjust our behavior to the context. And then second element of good practice is effectiveness. It involves defining and implementing goals that are relevant to the beneficiaries. It sounds obvious, but it really isn't. So it involves taking the time to do a needs and resource assessment, considering all the people involved. This also allows us to be inclusive. As mental health professionals, we can be tempted to think we know what people need, and this is where misunderstandings and tension can arise. Claudio writes, our work is about understanding and not assuming, and this implies a great deal of flexibility and openness from professionals. It also, again, requires time. And the only thing that we consider a universal need, and therefore we must always promote, is the third element of good practice, which is the feeling of safety. As Claudia was saying, we cannot force people to feel safe, but we can give signals that over time stimulate and nurture the feeling of safety. So again, with reference Borges and Polyvagal Theory, we can use a passive mode to promote safety. So a combination of postures and gestures, the tone of our voice, facial expressions, and an active mode such as play. But we always start with the passive mode.
Thank you. I really love the focus of looking to the past before we proceed forward. That is such an important point. And I love the story of leaving all of your tools in the tent because you really just wanted to join with the community and meet them where they were physically and be able to just have those initial engagements and interventions, even just before you're proceeding with therapy, just getting to know the space and the people. I also really appreciate being able to look at how our nonverbal gestures, the way that we're interacting, how important that is, and that as therapists to stop making the assumption that we already know what they need because we're supposedly the expert coming in, but really that's assumptive and that we should take a step back first and realize just what does the community need and meeting them where they are. Thank you so much for that. Claudio, any follow-up?
Well, I think you summarized, you focus on the all important points, and yeah, that's
wonderful. Thank you. Okay. Are there any ethical or legal considerations that we need to be aware of in crisis response group work intervention?
There are some consideration, really. What we noticed that is, in many contexts, the desire to act quickly leads to skipping some important steps that may have both legal and ethical relevance. So we would like to underline that immediate presence should not be confused with an hasty therapeutic intervention. So what usually happens is that sometimes the relationship with parents is overlooked, especially in interventions that involve a large number of beneficiaries. Caregivers are often dispossessed of their authority and their involvement treated like a formality. So many times the community, parents have the feeling that some kind of treatment, some kind of intervention is imposed on them. And this is very bad because undermines the possibility of understanding and building together. So one very important part is that any intervention should start with parents and adults of reference. So before to connect with children at any level, we should connect with parents. We should then let know our intention, to explain them why what we want to do it's useful. And we shouldn't think just of getting their approval, but we should actively seek their suggestions and possibly their participation. So this, I think, is the most important part to consider in terms of ethical component.
Thank you. Some of the trend that I've often seen here, especially when it comes to, for example, group interventions in a school-based setting, is that there's oftentimes, I think, that lack of consideration of the parents' involvement, depending on even just the location of where you're providing the service. And so sometimes when schools ask us to come in, there's a group of people maybe even already waiting, but we've then made that assumption that they are already agreeing to and engaged in that process, and the parents might have not even been considered or thought of. And so I think that that's a really important step that you're highlighting. Thank you. Yeah, that's wonderful. Isabella, any further thoughts?
No, I was thinking that I really agree with what you are saying, both of you. I never really thought about this aspect, but it's so important, and it links everything we said before somehow.
I agree. Yeah. Working right now in the capacity and working with individuals that are going into school settings, I'm very surprised to see the lack of participation or even sometimes consent from the parents, with this assumption that maybe teachers are referring these children for services, but that the child has automatically provided that consent, whereas they might feel that they're required to be there. So these are really important highlights. Thank you. What are your 5 most common go-to interventions? Oh, did I miss something? Sorry.
No,
okay.
No.
Okay.
I like that part.
Oh, thank you. What are your 5 most common go-to interventions that you would use consistently anywhere you go? And what modality, which already conflicts with what you've already said. So I realize that setting up these questions, I might be contradicting the elements that you've already told me, but
Fine.
we'll talk about it. The 5 go-to. So, for example, when I took your TheraPlay course at the conference a few years back, you referenced many interventions around these TheraPlay group interventions with the blanket and the animal and different types of things that you could go, back and forth, as one example. Also, to eliminate that language barrier, that these could be TheraPlay interventions might be appropriate to help with this universal language. And so things that you might do to create group cohesion, for example, or that initial empowerment, safety, and relationship build.
So one of the activities is, and you probably know it, is peanut butter jelly. So it's an activity that works well in group settings, even at an early stage. In the various countries where we shared it, we've always started by asking what 2 dishes are typically eaten together in that country. So we've had cappuccino cornetto in Italy, and then rice and chapati in India, or chicken and rice in Nigeria, and so on. So we have this little adjustment that we do to the activities. And then, of course, it involves having a leader saying the first food in a certain with a certain tone of voice and making a certain movement, and the group saying the second food in the same way, making the same movement. And the leader adjusts the tone and the movements and the duration of according to the group response. And this activity is typical, as you were saying, of attachment-based play therapy models.
I have to say that really the way that Isabella is doing it, and I've seen her doing it in so many places, in so many contexts, really it seems it works everywhere. Of course, she doesn't start from the beginning. Hello, my name is Isabella, let's play this. But the way she does it, it's opening a lot of doors. Not all the doors, that's opening a lot of doors.
Mm-hmm. I love peanut butter jelly. That's such
Yeah, it's fantastic. And you know what? It's nice when you ask for some food names that are very difficult to pronounce for us, and you are even more. You look like even more fun at the eyes of the others, and so you try to repeat this word. And I think that's the whole point, to create something fun and make other people understand that we are not just the expert, we are there to do something together. And so everything makes you look a little bit funnier. That's okay.
Mm-hmm. That's a wonderful. Any other thoughts? Any other interventions that?
Yes, we have also very classical ones. Simon Says, very well known in some countries and not at all known in some other countries. If I think about my country, Switzerland, we call it another name, but we have it. We call it The Magician Says, not Simon, but The Magician. I don't know why. Claudio is very good at this game. He creates that right combination of breathing activities, fast and slow movement. He's very funny and according to the ability and timing of the group. So it's very important to be able to adapt in every moment the activity. I think people who will listen to us know this activity. You want me to explain it, or you think it's like something that people would know how to do?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So
you might explain it.
Simon Says.
Yeah.
Yes. Oh yes, please.
Do you want me to explain it? Oh, okay. So when the leader says Simon Says, the group must do the same thing, basically. When he gives another direction without, however, being preceded by the word Simon Says, then the group continues to do what it was doing before. So the idea is to do something kind of tricky. And yeah, and the idea is also that even if you do a mistake, because you are following Simon, even when you don't have to, it's not a problem. And I think this activity is a kind of world heritage, like so many others. It originates with the people and passed down from generation to generation, and then over time integrated into play therapy interventions.
But the good thing of this activity, it can build for others. So through the play, Simon says, touch your head, or Simon says, touch your nose, and so on. Then we can build into other technique, like Simon says, become a big balloon. Or Simon says, move like a turtle. Breathe like an elephant. And with the time, with the group, we can use simply the activity like, let's move like turtles. Let's move like fish. Let's breathe like elephants. So it's a starting point for many other things that would be more difficult to teach. So there are many activities which we can teach a different way of breathing. But through this, children are really accepting it, and very easily, because we are teaching through a very funny kind of a game.
I have to say, being a person in my mid-40s, and you saying, Simon says, it took everything for me not to put my hand on my head, touch my nose. It's so far back there, but it's still there. Even now, I was like, I felt bad not putting my hands on my head. So it's this intervention that's almost at this level of awareness that's deeper. And I love that then you would introduce maybe some therapy concepts that are helpful for body regulation, like deep breathing and slowing down like a turtle, and some of these that you can introduce in a playful way, but that would be relevant if you get into more of the therapeutic intervention. That's so beautiful. Thank you.
Then what also works very well, but like not in a very advanced phase, but not at the beginning, is the drawing on the back. So always group activity that involves positive physical contact and a certain level of mutual trust. And yeah, as I was saying, it's best offered in a later stage than the other two activities. The group is seated in a circle. The leader says out loud what he or she is drawing on the child's back and models the movement, after which each child draws the same thing on the back of the person in front of them. And they should initially be very simple figures like a circle, a triangle, a square that can gradually become more complex. And at some point, we can come up with something more complex, such as the weather report with the sun, the rain, the clouds, maybe the wind or the lightning. And yeah, so this is also very fun. And it works on many aspects like self-regulation, fostering self-esteem, acceptance, but also attachment. And I must say, I have fond memories of my grandmother proposing this game to me when I was a child.
Isabella, I like very much activities you developed. Give me 5.
Oh, yes, give me 5.
Let's give me 5.
Yes, we have another one that we want to share with you. So Give Me 5, this is an activity I invented, and it can be done in group settings, but it's actually in pairs. I think of school classes and families when people know each other better, so for a longer time. One person traces the outline of another's hand on a blank sheet of paper with a pencil. For each finger, he or she looks for a quality of the classmate or family member and writes this in the finger. And then together they decorate the hand with a variety of creative materials. And the hand is then hung on the wall of the classroom, the living room, or the bedroom. Actually, this activity involves positive physical contact, promotes self-esteem, complicity and social skills, and creativity. It creates a pleasant atmosphere. And once the hands are hung on the wall, then the leader can read aloud the qualities of the children or family members. And they will have to guess who the hand belongs to. And this part reinforces everything, including the feeling of belonging to the group. So something very simple, but with many therapeutic hours of play in action.
Wonderful. That's a
We
great
do it also with adults, and when we have this supervision and training, and it's very seldom that the person is not happy to take the paper with her. Okay, I have this, I recognize this quality of myself. I want to see them. Oh, it's powerful.
And I love
both children and adults, they ask you to take these hands with them and just take it at home. Right. Sorry, Christy.
Oh no, I love that you're including adults in this. That's just really helpful. That it could be beneficial for children, but also adults. And that you're saying, of course, take it with you, because this is something which is very important. There are some things that we wouldn't necessarily have them take with them through that process, but this would be one that they could hang up on their walls at home and always remember.
Oh, yes, absolutely.
I love that. Any others? Any other interventions that
We would have so many.
I know?
Yeah,
Something that might be cultural, inspired. No, I'm Italian. I come from the land of opera. And sometimes you use this as a way to promote, this deep breathing, to have this longer the breathing. Is we use a game called Opera Talk. So when we can talk with each other, talking in opera style, like, can you pass me the pencil? And so we make it funny. It wouldn't be the first activity to do, but this helps to regulate, the kind of breathing. And having fun, we can add some kind of clothing if we feel like, put some clothes on it. It works. It's a different way to use our breathing exercise, and children loves it. Everybody will do in a different way, and that's also a funny thing, the Italian touch.
I love that. When we were doing the TheraPlay training, they were talking about yodeling, right?
Oh, yeah.
Oh yeah.
The yodeling that's always introduced, and just fun ways to be able to use these experiences to join, which is so lovely. So considering the demographic of people who are looking to, support our communities is through group work and this early intervention, do you have any final thoughts or recommendations or just really points that you want to make sure that are highlighted, or that the takeaways in all of the experience that you have and what brings you here? Is there anything, what would be some of these most important final thoughts that people should make sure they're taking away?
so maybe I'm repeating myself, but it's worth it. So even if people feel the pressure from outside and the pressure from inside, because we have both of them, don't rush your interventions. Take your time, explain if necessary your colleagues and parents or anyone who asks why you are taking time, and really don't rush, because we work with people's life, and we cannot do things just, we cannot hurry. We have to, of course, in a situation of emergency, intervening to do some small adjustment or to help in some practical ways. But when it's a matter of doing projects, intervention, longer terms intervention, we have to take our time to do really a need assessment and to have a clear idea, to be inclusive, to be respectful. So really don't rush. This would be my advice, don't rush.
I love that.
Yeah, in relation to that, we should hold a safe space for everybody, and in any interaction. So it can be interaction in the playroom, outside of it, but it's important what messages we convey to others. So we are like safe bank for others, and that's a starting point. And sometimes maybe we have in mind to have a very articulated intervention, but sometimes we don't have the time, we don't have the possibility. So we can keep it simple, giving importance to each single interaction. And before that also is important that we should consider that if we are gonna be a part of intervention, we have to think that we can be an added value. Okay, what I can bring there, that we should be aware. And what is also very important to be flexible, but at the same time to have some clear reference point in our mind.
Mhm.
One of these can be being a safe person, a safe space for somebody else, and somebody that is willing to understand what is going on. So to respect what's happening, that's also a very important part.
Mhm. As a
Also be open to change your mind if it's necessary, which is the most difficult thing to do.
Mhm. Thank you. To be adaptable as a clinician. I can
Then
tell
there
you.
is,
Oh, no, go ahead. Go ahead.
sorry, no, there are many things. One thing also is what I would never do.
Oh.
What I would never do is a play festival. Like I'm going there, okay, we are going to play. We are going to organize a lot of play. But this intervention is not about us. It's not about just play. It's about to have multiple interaction that are healthy, that are safe, that are about connection, in which play can have a role, but it's not about just playing, because it's not entertainment. Entertainment also has a role, but it's something different and should be placed along the way.
The babysitting
Not
concept, right? We're not babysitters to play, that we're coming in for, and the assumption of we're going to do all this play, that it really defeats that purpose. Yeah, I appreciate that. Isabella, is there anything that you would not do coming in?
Yeah, maybe I will never put myself in the middle and my needs, which is a process. Because of course it's not easy, but really I will never think, oh, that's not nice for me, that's not comfortable for me. Yeah, we really have to think that we use this term to the beneficiaries, not just to us. And of course, on the other side, we have to feel fine too. But this is like there is another time, another moment to think of ourselves. So when we are in a certain kind of context, let's put the beneficiaries at the center, our intentions. And this, yeah, it took me a lot of time to be able to do this, like to separate, but it works better.
Yeah. That we're the conduit, but or the vessels, but we are not it's not our agenda, right?
It's not, yeah, exactly. That's the perfect sentence. Yeah, it's not our agenda.
Yeah, yeah. I also love pulling from Gary Landreth often of, what does this child need versus my levels of comfort? And I think sometimes therapists have different levels of comfort, but then that introduces almost your needs, and so but I mean, that's besides the point, but really that a child needs certain things, they know what they need, and that we are there to support them along the way, which I think is really lovely. One of the things, oh, go ahead. Yeah.
No, sorry, it comes because I have a lot of images now, and also colleagues saying, yeah, I'm not having so much fun. And you really want to answer them, that's not the point. You're not gonna have fun because you're not there for having fun. And so you cannot consider the whole process in these terms. It's not about you having fun. It's not about how. It's not just and not firstly about how you are feeling. Oh, but yeah, it's very easy to be egocentric somehow. But in this work, we don't have to. We have to take care of ourselves, but not being at the center.
I think sometimes therapists might be set up for failure because they're asked as the expert to come in and support their community. and that it already puts us in a place of privilege and in a place of, assumption that we will be the expert and provide guidance and answers and healing and recovery. But really that's not our place, even though they've made it our place, even though that's, what we're supposed to be doing. Yeah. I was going to say a little bit earlier that as a community member who's experienced fire just from the other side in disaster relief work, that my capacity to be able to join in anything that might be helpful in any way, whether it's therapy or whatever it is, was very much reduced, and that some of those basic elements of sense of safety and whether or not we would still have a home, and then the extra pressure of let's say in our case the Red Cross that came, there's a lot of pressure that comes with that, or FEMA when FEMA came, and the extra military that came in, that there's also, even after the immediate threat, some of these extra uncomfortable feelings and senses of safety when you still feel navigated by, I think, a bigger system that comes in to intervene in some of these, relief efforts. And so knowing that sometimes not intervening in a therapeutic way is a really excellent choice. And to really, I love, Claudio, what you talked about when you just went into the tents. You just left everything in your tent and you went to their tents and you just said hello. Sometimes it's just a conversation that you can have with somebody else. And instead of trying to provide relief when the reality is that no relief could really be had in that very, very moment, that it takes a little bit of time to be able to not full recover, but just out of those crises. I mean, when you're still in that fight, flight, freeze, and that just seems to last for days and days, that maybe that's not the best time. Maybe people's capacities would be more better served from just holding a space that people can come to and talk with other community members, and that you could just facilitate that conversation by holding space where there's no agenda and there's no anything attached. So I want to thank you both so much for joining and for holding this conversation. And I value you both very much as humans, as practitioners, as researchers, as trainers, presenters. You're amazing people. And to have the honor to know you just feels like an absolute privilege on my end. So thank you for sharing your expertise and for sharing this moment that will be able to support other people as they're navigating the journey of trying to do group work in the future. So
thanks to you, Christy, for inviting us and for always being so kind with us. We really appreciate your way of treating us somehow. So really thank you.
Of course.
We also know your work, what you are doing, and we are also very glad to be in contact with you, and we appreciate what you are doing in several capacities. So
thank you so much. That warms my heart. It's really, really nice to hear that from you. Yeah. So thank you again. And we'll just be in touch through all of the ways we keep in touch, of course. And but for this part, I just want to thank you and thank you for providing this opportunity. Yeah.
Thanks to you, Christy.
Thanks
to you.
Bye for now.